Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in this one, we are going to be breaking down every map in Battleground Blitz to give you the best strategies in order to achieve victory, so you don't end up feeling like you're just completely useless in a battleground, and so you're getting the maximum value out of your class and your team composition. And if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Now, the first battleground we are going to be covering is probably the most confusing as to where to get the most effective value out of your class, and that is Arathi Basin. It consists of 5 classes. My first point of advice is classes that you send to Lumber Mill. You're going to want it to be classes that have high amounts of crowd control and knockbacks, and the ability to avoid knockbacks. So something like a mage is one of the most ideal classes to send up to Lumber Mill. They can use Blast Wave to knock enemies off the side. They can polymorph to cap the base. They can use Ice Wall to cap the base. They are one of the most effective classes to send to Lumber Mill. Evoker is the second most effective, whether they're Preservation or Devastation, depending on your composition. Due to honor talents like Swoop, it enables Evokers to pull enemies to the side of the cliff and send them off the ravine. Not to mention their crowd control Sleepwalk doesn't diminish with Polymorph. So if you have a Preservation Evoker and a Mage combination going up to Lumber Mill, this is going to be easy pickings, easy cap-ins for you here on this map. The next one is Monk. With their knockback effects, they are really effective at just sending enemies off the side, and they're also one of the best healers to send up here, along with Priest. This would be like the combination, the triple threat. These are the best kind of healers that you could send up here. Evoker being likely the best, Mistweaver the second, Priest being the third, along with a Mage. Some alternative classes that you can send obviously would be something like an Elemental Shaman. They're similar to a Mage. They have Hex, they have Thunderstorm, they have Static Field Totem, they can knock enemies off the side, or something like a Balance Druid, which can actually be really effective at just destroying the Mage. Cyclone is a great tool to cap, Bash is a great tool to cap. Typhoon's not as effective, but it's more so its raw power in the 1v1 against the Mage that can be effective in this case, in this scenario. But these are kind of the most ideal classes that you can send up to Lumber Mill. Mage being the Biss, Ellie Boomkin being secondary, Preservation, Mistweaver, and Disc as the healer, kind of in that order as far as you wanting to get the most effective value out of these classes. The next one is the Blacksmith. Now, the Blacksmith is about sending classes that can spin. So you're going to want to send one healer. Again, you just want to send the healers that either have few knockbacks or limited knockbacks compared to the others. So you send the healers that basically don't have knockbacks to Blacksmith because they're going to be the second best healer in order to heal this base. And you send classes that are tanky. You send things like Warriors. You send things like Death Knights. You send melee that can spin. You can also send Shadow Priests here to the Blacksmith. Something that can spin the base, has high survivability, might have some tools to cap, like Intimidating Shout or a Psychic Scream or Hammer of Justice like that. But your main goal here is to just kind of brawl it out and hopefully have your team win Lumber Mill so that they can jump down to Blacksmith and aid you in capping it, and you can kind of do a 3-base rotation depending on what goes on at Goldmine. Now, Goldmine is all about sending classes that are good at 1v1s and 2v2 double DPS. So the best classes to do that with are going to be Rogue and Ret Paladin. This is like the ideal. This is like the best comp that you could have to send down to Goldmine would be a Ret Paladin and a Rogue. They will absolutely clap anything that comes to this base. They can cap it with crowd control, smoke bomb, bubble, searing glare. They can go the whole 9 yards. They can win almost any 2v2 against any other combination of classes. And that's why you're going to really get high value out of them. You can also send Warlock to Blacksmith. I'm just trying to make it so you guys can see all the different classes. You can send a Hunter to farm. They can kind of defend it. You can be risky with farm because you can similarly send like a Rogue to cap farm, and then that Rogue can split. That Rogue can go up to Lumber Mill. That Rogue can go to Goldmine and Ninja away. And this is a little bit of a riskier strat, but if you're losing, you're going to have to play the riskier line in order to win, likely. But if you're winning all the bases, you can just kind of have the Hunter sit at farm or the Rogue sit at farm and kind of just continually take this base because they're going to be A-okay. And then obviously I don't really interact with stables. So if you're on the opposite side, you just flip this, right? It would just be the Hunter and the Rogue on this side. Going after stables is super risky. To me, the best strat is to just keep it really simple. If you've got a really good knockback composition, try to win Lumber Mill, and then, you know, this guy can flake off from farm and then come back down to Blacksmith and win Blacksmith, and you can cap these 3 bases. If you have a really good double DPS composition, like a Ret and a Rogue, but not a really good Lumber Mill composition, then, you know, focus more around Goldmine. Maybe this guy will flake out to Goldmine and try and win Blacksmith and Goldmine and kind of rotate between these 3. That's been the most effective strategies that I have seen for it, and the best ways ways to adapt to it depending on your given circumstance, and it's provided me the highest value. Anytime I see a team not do that, they send a healer gold mine, they end up just sitting here forever and being totally useless. Or if somebody's just roaming the entire map the whole time, it just gets way too chaotic. You can kind of do that if you play a rogue. You might be able to carry games, but pretty much, and maybe a ret paladin and a rogue can kind of just free roam and do what they want, but that's just because they're really OP. But I think this strategy is like a much more kind of just like bulletproof, straightforward strategy for Arathi Basin. The next map we're going to be looking at is Deepwind Gorge, which is very similar to Arathi Basin, but a little bit more confusing, and also knockback compositions are not as strong. So ideally, your defenders are going to be something like a Ret Paladin. They're going to be something like a Hunter or something like a Rogue. Probably likely Hunter being the weakest of the options here because they will lose to a Rogue or a Ret very easily. I think Ret is the best defending class in this case, in this instance. And obviously, if you wanted to copy it, you would do the same thing at the bottom. This is like ideal situation. You're probably likely not going to have 2 Rets, 2 Rogues, and 2 Hunters in order to do this. So other classes that can be decent defenders are things like mages. So we'll leave the mages here as well towards the side. And the main reason that they're a great class to defend is because they have multiple crowd control breakers with ice block. Or you could put Death Knights here as well in order to defend these if you absolutely needed to. So it's kind of like I'm making like a tier list, right? Like these are the most ideal, second most ideal. Maybe Death Knight's probably more ideal than Hunter in those cases, but the middle base is more of just kind of the market here is just a spin fight. It's exactly the same as Arathi Basin. You want to send the healers that can just survive, can just spin the flag, sending warriors, sending tanky melee. Maybe you send a warlock because warlock, you want to send the classes that suck at 1v1 basically. Warlock is not great at 1v1. It can be okay. Boomkin is not really great at 1v1, so it can be great at spinning. Ellie Shaman is not really great at 1v1, so it can be great at spinning in the mid type of deal. You really want to send the classes that have bad dueling capabilities to mid, the DPS and a healer in order to spin this. And then when you're attacking enemy bases, it's literally almost a clone of the other side where like you would ideally want a Ret or a Rogue attacking these bases because they're just the best 1v1 specs in the game. They'll absolutely destroy anything. But obviously if you don't have that, I think a mage is not a bad idea either to send to these bases. I've seen some strategies where people will send Boomkin to these bases. It can work, but if there's a Ret or a Rogue there, you're going to get absolutely destroyed in that sense. Demon Hunter's kind of a flex. I think Demon Hunter can spin mid and it can be like an attacking class. It can go up here to these other bases. It's not too bad if you go either way. And then you can have a healer that roams. So this healer could go down to these bases while one healer is spinning. The healers that you want to have roam are the healers that have mobility. So Druid, Evoker, and Mistweaver. If you're going to have a healer that roams to try and guarantee one of these fights. And you probably want to have a roaming healer if you don't have a lot of Rets and the Rogues and Mages. If you don't have those good 1v1 specs, then the healer will want to, if you got a Boomkin or something like that, right? If you had a Boomkin, the healer will want to babysit that Boomkin and kind of run around to these bases to fight the opposing Rets and Rogues, because otherwise they're going to be really fragile. They're going to get completely owned and they're going to get completely smashed in that sense. But that's the main goal. You send something tanky, melee, that's a teamfight spec that sucks at dueling with a healer to mid. They spin, try and cap it with CC because you're likely not going to win with damage. Base defending classes, these are the best ones in order, in my opinion, for this. If you really had to do it, if you're desperate, you can obviously do Druid Defender as well because they have stealth, they have trance, they can use pets as their boomkins and things like that. But this would be like ideal setup. And then the ideal offense setup is also the 1v1 specs. But if you have a bad 1v1 offense setup, then a healer can roam. And also the healer can adapt because I think this is the best strat. If you execute the strat, you'll likely win if the other team isn't doing it pretty easily. But if they aren't, they're doing something random, then the healer will have to flex between, maybe going back and helping the rogue out because they sent 4 people randomly up here. But if they sent 4 people up there, then your split strat is likely going to win the middle. It's likely going to win the bottom. And that's why I think this is the most effective and efficient use of your resources for Deepwind Gorge. The next map is Silver Shard Mines. So lava is a team fight base. So you want to send limited mobility, good team fight specs down to lava. So if you have an assassination rogue, you want to send them down to lava. If it's a subtlety rogue, then you would want to send them off to the side because the best specs to cap the off carts are 1v1 specs. So you can see that we're breaking classes down basically into team fight specs and dueling specs. The best dueling specs are going to be the ones, we're moving our map around a little bit too much here. The best dueling specs are almost always the same. I just copy pasted way too much stuff. The dueling specs are almost always the same. It's Ret, Rogue, Mage, Feral Druid also. I should have said that. You can put Feral Druid on offense on these bases. Feral Druid would be really good. Feral Druid can also defend these bases. It's going to be remarkable for either of those. So just remember to break it down into those categories of 1v1 and team fight and know what your spec's role is, because then you're going to absolutely dominate. You're gonna farm because you're using the effective classes in their location. So you send high mobility 1v1 dueling specs. Windwalker works too also, although I almost never see Windwalker in BG Blitz, but Windwalker also works for this. You send dueling 2v2 specs to these off carts. You can kind of dictate depending on what base you're at, right? If your alliance, if top's capping first, then you want to prioritize top. If middle's capping first, you'd want to prioritize middle, depending on where you're going. And if your comp has more of these really good 1v1 specs, you're probably going to easily win these off carts. And if that's the case, you better hope that your team wins the team fight heavily and can send a healer to those bases. And again, that healer from the team fight is going to be like the one that roams is the one with higher mobility. So like the evokers, the druids, the monks. The priest is not going to want to be going from lava all the way to mid card to top card down here. They're just not going to be able to get around to all the bases that they need. So limited mobility classes should likely focus on staying here at the team fight and just making sure they win the team fight. Demon Hunter, again, I think is a flex class. You can send it to off card, you can send it to team fight. So just determine that depending on if you've got 3 great 1v1 specs, then go in team fight. If you don't have any good 1v1 specs, then you're going to have to go. And Hunter is kind of the same. I think Hunter is honestly very weak on this type of map. I think it's better at off cart because it has tools to just knock enemies off the side, root them, trap them, and kind of ninja the base. So you don't really win through raw pressure with this map. If you're a hunter, you can just win with crowd control and setting up CC. DK can be decent at both. So if you really wanted to, you could send DK to the off carts, or you could send DK to the main team fight. DK can also be really good at just preventing enemies from cycling around the map depending on where they're trying to go. Another thing to consider on this map also is that you can flip the carts. So if you're losing these off carts because you don't have a lot of good dueling specs, or you're just getting farmed, you can flip top cart to go here instead, and it'll delay the cap, and you can try and focus more on winning mid and winning lava. Same goes if you're losing the team fight. You can flip the cart to go top and try and focus more on winning the middle or the top cart. But these are like mid-game flex adaptations. Main strategy to start out is to just send low mobility, strong team fight, high DPS classes lava, send the best dueling specs, Feral Druid, Mage, Rogue, Ret, to top and mid, and try and win with that. And if you win nothing, you're probably not winning the BG with this strat at that point. You just got unlucky. You're going to kind of have to go next. I realize that my camera is blocking half the classes that I've put here now. You're probably just going to have to go next. But to me, this has been the most effective strategy for Silver Shard mines and has gotten me the most amount of wins. Now, Deep Hole Ravine is a lot more straightforward. You can pretty much just send everything mid at the beginning, because obviously carts are going to spawn here. They're going to cap through. The whole point of the mid fight is that you're spinning the crystal and you're not letting a Mistweaver ninja it or something like that and then pour it up and then they get out and they cap it. Because if they get the crystal, it can start snowballing because it gives you bloodlust when you cap it. So you just want to keep an eye on this. So team fight classes, that limited mobility, like the Warlocks and the Boomkins, Ellie Shamans, they want to focus mid and focus on spinning, max damage, try and win this team fight, because if you can wipe this team fight, you're going to take control of both of these cross sections on the tracks, which are really important choke points to hold. If you just win the team fight outright, you're probably going to get both caps, the flag, and the crystal, and go through, right? Otherwise, you just want to see how they're rotating, who's peeling away. Again, I think the best classes to peel away are kind of melee DPS, because they have to be in the cart to be able to actually get the cart and attack things, whereas ranged can kind of flex between the two of them, see if somebody's peeling off towards the cart, see if someone's peeling away from the crystal. I think this is why this is my favorite BG in the whole pool, is because it's all condensed here, and you got to be really careful about awareness on where you're going. You can still use knockback strats to try and cap the carts like Silver Shard mines, but the main focus is winning the team fight. It's just win the team fight in the middle, utilize crowd control on healers, focus down healers if you're a melee heavy team. If you're a ranged team, focus on crowd controlling the healers, landing interrupts on the healers. Healing is the most powerful role in Battleground Blitz, so you want to really focus on limiting their output. If you've limited their output successfully, then you're going to absolutely crush it in the team fight. But this one it's almost like self-explanatory. You just go middle, spin the crystal, win the team fight, try and fight for control of the carts as they're moving through, and there's not really anything to worry about as far as splitting classes on this map. Now, Eye of the Storm, this is a map where you're going to have a class like a hunter who's going to defend a base. It doesn't matter, whichever team you're spawning on. They're going to defend Fel Reaver. They're going to defend Draenei. They're going to kind of just sit there. And this is kind of just everybody else goes mid. You want to keep an eye on rogues because rogues can, sneak across, kill your hunter. You got to listen and come back to him, or they might go, sneak across, kill the hunter. So some rogues will do that, and you can do that if you're a rogue on this map. Ideally, you're going to be playing knockback strategies. So you're going to be sending in mages, shamans, druids. Warlock with Shadow Rift can be really good as well. You can put your portal on the bottom here and Shadow Rift enemies off the side and cap it. The best strategy that I've seen is a mage just beelines it into the middle on their mount, triple blinks in here and ice walls off the side. You take the flag, you take it back, and you hold it here forever. If you're on the opposing team and that happens to you, basically you want to try and gain control of the flag and run it off the cliff, because once the flag gets to too many stacks, it's too hard to actually carry it across. Someone on your team will pick it up, they'll die instantly, and then you'll lose the rest of the team fight because someone died instantly, or worse, someone picks it up again and then they die instantly. You've lost the team fight and you can't even get it back. Best strat, if the other team takes the flag, is to try and get it and just run it off the cliff and reset it and try and win the fight here again, or have a rogue that's going to ninja this and somehow get it back for you. But again, this is very simple map. It's just everybody's going to be brawling it out in the middle. Try and knock enemies off. Use death grips. Use static field totems to pull enemies off to corners. Knock them off. Win the team fight. Avoid knockoffs, obviously, for the opposing side. Once you have the flag, try and hold it as close to this base as possible. And the opposing team's goal is to try and get the flag, run it off, reset it, somehow get it, and run it back if that happens. But usually this is like one of my least favorite ones, because as soon as a team gets the flag, it kind of feels like that team is likely going to win. If you think the enemy team is going to kill you and they're going to run it off the cliff, I do think capping the flag to guarantee that you get a point lead and then moving to the next base is a safer strategy, and just spin the middle while you move to the next base is a safer strategy if you think the other team is actually going to be able to pull that off and kill you. But that's been the most effective strategy for me, at least so far. Gilneas is another one that's just really straightforward. You just basically send everybody, I'm clicking on too many things again. You just send everybody to Waterworks, right? It's just everybody goes to Waterworks except one dude who's probably mad that he doesn't get to go to Waterworks. And it's likely going to be like a Hunter. I think Hunter is just the abyss for defending on this map, and they're just not very helpful in teamfight at the moment. Maybe that changes in 11.1. On this map, the cheeky strat is to send an Outlaw Rogue from the starting room, and he goes all the way here with grappling hooks and hyper speed, and smoke bomb caps the base before the other team can get there. Now, they're patching that out of the game next season, but for this season, that is the best strat. If you have an Outlaw Rogue, you've got basically a free win on this map because it can get there, and then you should spin these two, double defend this one, spin this one, and get it. Pay attention if the other team has an Outlaw Rogue. There might be a way to combat it if you can somehow get there fast enough, but if you have like an AoE range circle you can put down on the base while they're capping and bomb, if they don't cloak cap and it's not physical, you might be able to get it. But this one is really just go Waterworks, team fight, win the team fight, double split back, sit at your bases. Again, if you're a rogue, you can try and ninja this, especially if you think your team fight is going to be losing. You can try and risk it and try and go for ninja as opposed to team fight. I think this only really holds true if you're if you're subtlety. I think if you're outlaw, obviously going here quick capping is the best. If you're assassin, I think going here and team fighting is honestly the best. Assassin's team fight is just really good, but this is just much like Silver Shard. It's a much more simplified map. And if you've lost the team fight here and they've managed to ninja your base, then you're probably just SOL. There's not much you're really going to be able to do to come back in that sense for this map. But this one's a lot more straightforward. Again, I find this one a little bit more boring just because it's more straightforward, but those have been the most effective strats. Temple of Kotmogu. This one gets really hectic. Ideally, in my opinion, if you're a ranged DPS, you want to be picking up the orbs because you can do a lot of damage when your orb stacks up really high and stay at a safe distance, unlike a melee, where if you pick up the orb, you're kind of just in the fight. If you want to do damage and benefit from the damage bonus from the orb, it can get really rough. But I've seen right at the start, a lot of players will just pick up the orbs right away. You just run in, pick up the orb, see where they're going. You obviously don't want to run into their team. This is kind of a BG that's more around the healers. So if you're a healer, your main goal is to stay in a position where you can heal the orb no matter where they are. You're just keeping your eyes on the orb. Keep the orbs as safe as possible because the higher the stacks they go, obviously the more fragile they get, but the stronger they get, so they can just start one-tapping people back. And the biggest mistake I've seen on this map has been from healers that don't stay in range of their orbs, or they don't know where they are. So just tracking the orbs, keeping in range of the orbs, keep the orbs alive because they're going to do 3 times the damage of anyone else on your team, and protecting them. Now, if you're a good 1v1 spec or an assassin class, like a rogue or a ret, your goal is the opposite of the healers. Your goal is to find the orbs that are isolated away from the healers, or CC the healers, and then crush out the orbs as fast as possible, while your ranged DPS continue to pick up the orbs as they drop, and then cycle them through. And if you're dominating, obviously you're going to be able to more comfortably hold them in the center here. But often I see players playing around like this upper top side, because like as a warlock or a monk, you can put your portal on the top, jump down to the middle, and then portal back out, back into the back line if you get into trouble. The same thing works for monk. You can do the same thing, portal in the corner, play out here. If you're a druid, you can wild charge, and you can jump up and jump across these gaps in order to hold the flag. So you're playing somewhere in and around like these main kind of corners. And the advantage of playing these corners also is that shields spawn here on these sides. So you can pick up a shield, use the Z-axis as well to avoid damage, and kind of kite like this and pew 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 range damage to the middle while picking up the shield and being really durable throughout these sides. Now, if you die running back in, you can pick up the cooldown buff. Make sure to do that. Anytime you're a class, you don't have cooldowns, there's a cooldown buff that spawns here, and it spawns here on top of the paladin icon. Pick up that cooldown buff and run back in. And you can also pick up the berserking as I move my whole map around here again. You can pick up the berserking whenever you res, and you come in and you try to go after the orbs with that. Obviously, stealthing in on top of orbs is really effective, so stealth classes are going to be super effective here. But that's generally been the most effective way that I've found in order to win Temple of Kotmogu. Now, Warsong Gulch is a lot different, obviously, right? Like, so ideal flag carrier is a Mistweaver monk. I think a second ideal one is like a Preservation Evoker with the hover snare immunities. Outlaw Rogue can be a really good flag carrier, and like Discipline Priest can be a really good flag carrier. These have been like, if you have those are the most ideal. If you have a tank class, they can flag carry it. I've seen some tanks actually do really well as flag carriers, but these would be like the primary 4 that you would likely want to utilize. Druid flag carriers kind of just explode. Mage flag carriers explode. Warlock flag carriers can be rough. But if you're a warlock, you can play offense or defense. The advantage of playing offense is that you can relay a gateway. So basically every FC, right, is going to bring the flag up on the roof. So they're going to be up here on the roof. Now, as a warlock, when you go through the ramp here towards getting to the roof, you can actually build a gateway that goes Z-axis up this hill right to the ledge. So you can just boom, boom, boom. So if the other team is a Death Knight or a Hunter, and they've got snares and they're preventing you from getting in the base, having a warlock on offense can actually be really good to get this gateway so the entire team can just instantly get up to the roof to be able to chase the monk down. So, but the same can be said also on defense. If you're a warlock, you can put your portal in the bottom side and shadow rift enemies off of your flag carrier. So just kind of look and weigh the odds here, because warlock is something that can be good on offense and it can be good on defense. Death Knight is the same thing. You can be really good on offense and defense. Death Knight's kind of, you just want to prevent the enemy from ever even getting to the objective in the first place. You're kind of just in the middle, gripping and snaring and preventing the flag carrier from getting there. If they do get it, you're preventing them from getting back. You ideally just don't want them to get into their nest position. You want to be disrupting them and snaring them before they even get to that spot. That's going to be the best way to play Death Knight. But if they do get there, then obviously measure it. If you got Hunters on your team, I think Hunters are really good defense. I think they should almost always be defense. Main reason is they have flare, and they have a lot of choke points, and they have root traps, and they can diamond trap melee. They're really good at peeling, roar sacrifice, scatter shot. They're really good at just stopping enemies from getting through, and they can pew pew people while they try and run through the gauntlet circle of trying to get to the top side to be able to get to your flag carrier on the roof. Hunter to me is like almost always really good on defense. Same thing for Warrior. Warrior's really good on defense. Intervene is really powerful, really effective. Lots of stuns, lots of disruption, and it can kind of crush an offensive push really quickly with Bladestorm damage, especially when offense has no healers. So to me, like Warrior and Hunter are just some of the best defending specs that you can have in the game. Mage can also be really good with Ring of Frost and the knockbacks and the snare effects that it has, but it can also be really good on offense because it's got so much instant cast damage. So it's kind of a bit more of a flex in terms of offense. In terms of defense, I should maybe put these guys. I should have given them like different colors depending on what team they were on. But Demon Hunter, probably offense, but it can be okay defense. You can kind of flex between the two of them. These would just be like the BIS, Warrior, Hunter, D, with these guys as the FC. And then everybody else can kind of just go where they need to. I think Ret Paladin is really good at just kind of just running into the enemy FC with bubble and wings and just one-shotting before they can even go anywhere. So that's just been my experience with Warsong Gulch. Those have been like the best classes to have in those positions, and it's been able to get me the most amount of wins. Whenever a team doesn't do those strategies, I'm usually losing. Twin Peaks is the final flag carry map, and it's the same situation, right? For this one, it's Mistweaver, it's Preservation Evoker is FC, Outlaw Rogue is FC or Tank Spec, and then Discipline Priest as your main flag carriers. Hunter and Warrior are best defenders. These guys are just going to be really good at just stopping people from getting through. Death Knight is the flex, can go between different directions. You just got to be really good at Death Knight, honestly, in order to be really effective in this BG, because choosing when to keep somebody pinned in the middle of death grip versus getting into the base and gripping people down from the balcony and getting them into a better position for your team is going to be really important. Warlock is very similar. You can use Shadow Rift. I think on this map it's a little bit better on defense. You can put Shadow Rift actually outside the base here, and then portal people from literally inside the base to the outside of the base, and they have to go all the way around. It takes forever for them to get back in. As opposed to offense, you don't really get the same type of gateway advantage as you do on Warsong Gulch. So Warlock's a little bit better on defense than it is on offense. Rogue is obviously really good for offense, although you may want to play middle like Death Knight, and if you see a DPS by themselves, just kill them off really quickly, especially for subtlety, before you go in for offense. But Rogue is generally really good for offense. Ret, same deal with offense, really good. Mage can be good for defense, especially because you can kind of control this outside area and knock enemies, keep them from entering with Ring of Frost, and really prevent them as like a gauntlet on coming in. So Mage can be really good on defense. Obviously, it can be really good for offense as well. Just using Invis, sneaking up on somebody. Druid, I generally think, is better for offense on almost all the flag carry maps, as Boomkin or Feral Druid, just because you can sneak in and you can just pop somebody with your cooldowns really quickly and just zap them. And then Demon Hunter is kind of a flex. I think, offense, because it's got a lot of mobility to stay on a flag carry, is really good. But defense, Spectral Sight, lots of CC, stuns, and in caps can also be decent. So you might want to flex between defense or offense if you're a Demon Hunter in these situations. And if you're a Shaman, honestly, this map ends up being kind of weird because you might have a team fight in the middle while the flag carriers go from side to side, and being a shaman is going to be more effective to win the team fight. But after that, you can kind of feel kind of useless, especially as Ellie, because it's hard to actually get into the base and get to the target, because they're going to set up a gauntlet here on defense and stop you from getting in, and you don't have the stealth tools. So I think it's honestly better on defense unless you absolutely have to go on offense, just because you don't have enough bodies in order to go through. But the ideal defense is obviously flag carrier plus other healer, and then usually 1 or 2 DPS, ideally being like a hunter or a warrior, and then the rest, everybody else is going to be going offense. They're going to be going into the base and trying to take out the flag carrier. But those are my strategies that I've noticed to be the most effective so far. Those are strategies that I'm hoping my team is going to implement whenever I get these maps in Battleground Blitz. I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown and it's helped you figure out where you can get the most value out of your class and value out of your team for your successful pushes towards the end of the season. Appreciate you guys watching the video. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the next one.